Let's get one thing right off the bat, because I'm sure that by the time this video is over, you're going to think that I absolutely hate this show, that I think it's a completely irredeemable piece of crap. But the truth of the matter is that that is not the point of the video, as you might think from the title and from the thumbnail I made and I'm using for it. I do not hate the show Jessica Jones. In fact, 70% of this show is easily some of the most gripping and interesting storytelling I've probably seen from any comic book related property that's been adapted into another medium. It is very powerful. It has lots of themes and ideas that have just never been dealt with in comic book adaptations, and in most cases they are readily avoided in many other types of storytelling. And to see something like this get presented in this kind of way, in this kind of bluntness, is something that should genuinely be commended for. The performances are across the board fantastic. You know, Krysten Ritter, who does Jessica Jones, she brings a lot of pathos to the role. When she's being smarmy and sarcastic, she really works. When she's being brooding, she works. Same thing with the Luke Cage guy. Despite being a little bit monotone, a little bit bland looking, the dude who plays Luke Cage, who's also, I think, Agent Locke from Halo 5 Guardians, he also has a lot of untapped potential in his performance. He really does have this sort of charm about him. He's very cool, he's really collected, and he's just as damaged as Jessica Jones, but because he's holding himself better, that makes their whole dynamic really, really interesting to watch. And of course, there is a comic book related property these days is not afraid to show that these guys like to fuck each other's brains out like jackrabbits, so there's another big plus there. You got David Tennant being David Tennant as the Purple Man. Fantastic villain, very unique type of villain who readily sets himself apart from all the other guys, because unlike all the other pseudo-philosophical bad guys who are all about anarchy and chaos and bringing down the establishment, this guy is just a sociopath who's also a spurned ex-boyfriend who's also got the ability to make people do whatever the fuck they want, and usually that stuff can be very, very dark and disturbing or unintentionally hilarious, like when he tells a guy to just keep bashing his own head against a wall until he drops dead, which was just one of the many instances where the Purple Man's dark humor really shines. And a lot of these elements come together to form a show that, for 70% of its run, is really gripping and really engaging. However, episodes 10 to 12 really showcase a lot of the problems with the supporting cast, with the pacing, and a lot of the other B storylines that are happening throughout the rest of the show. And this is a particular issue mostly that comes from the pacing first and foremost, because this is not a show that has enough content and material to support 13 episodes. This is something that I thought was a problem with Daredevil, but upon rewatching it before finishing up Jessica Jones, I was actually surprised by how well Daredevil paces itself. And the reason why Daredevil's length works and is justified is because you're not seeing a whole bunch of characters just bash their wall against just one guy for the whole duration of the entire season. Kingpin has this whole evil council of other criminals surrounding him. He has the Russians, Anatoly, and my boy Vladimir. He has the Chinese and the Japanese with Nobu and Gao. He has the evil accountant Owlsley. He has Wesley as his supporter. Then we have Vanessa as his lover. And the reason why Kingpin's fall, despite being a very hard, very, difficult process for the protagonists to overcome, the reason why Kingpin's fall works is because of that council. It means it shows us that despite the Kingpin overall winning for the majority of the season, the heroes are still making progress. They're taking out the Russians. They're taking out, Gao and Nobu. It feels like even when the odds are so unbelievably stacked up against the good guys and when everything is just crumbling all around them, the good guys are still winning, thanks in part to their own efforts and by Kingpin self-destructing his whole criminal organization because he's opened up his feelings to Vanessa. And this creates a great sense of progress for everybody. It shows us that even if the main bad guy still isn't being taken down, the pillars supporting him are being taken down, and this ultimately leads to the Kingpin's downfall. And this is why Daredevil manages to justify its own length and its own pacing. Jessica Jones' problem is that it is everyone versus the Purple Man for 13 episodes. And by episode 9 is when things really should have just been over. That's the point where everything has been kind of wrapped up more or less. Everything feels like it's leading up to this big dramatic conclusion that's maybe just an episode away, but that's not the case. The season keeps going on for 3 or 4 more episodes where you just really realize how fucking pointless a lot of this other stuff that's supposed to serve as subplots is. You know, the whole divorce storyline is painfully fucking stupid. It's just there so that Purple Man can escape. The whole Simpson military storyline where you're taking this character who was interesting in his inception because he's a cop who gets taken over by this mind-controlling sociopath and forced to kill an innocent woman, and he is stopped and saved by this innocent woman's best friend who could have just let him die, but she doesn't because that's not how she operates. And Simpson comes back in following episodes to make amends and to help the good guys. And this is a very interesting change in a very interesting direction because in a lot of these types of shows, when a victim becomes the victim of some evil bastard who's still, out there, the victim is just like, oh, well, yeah, that happened, and then they just get written out of the show. But here, there's this whole support group of people who've been spurned by the Purple Man. They're supposed to, help each other talk about what he's done to them, to help them overcome their own personal issues. And then you have another one of these people who's been hurt by the Purple Man who's taking a very proactive role in helping to stop him. And then they just kind of derail this whole interesting character by making him Nuke, because every comic book character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe must end up as he does in the comics, so let's sacrifice this compelling, interesting character who could have just been a throwaway role. Let's just throw him under the bus so we can introduce Nuke and some pseudo-military bullshit subplot that's going to be the main plot of Season 2, which was just a massive waste of a character and a massive waste of potential because Simpson is diametrically opposed to Jessica. Jessica is a person who sees the world in lots and lots of grays, while Simpson is a guy who sees things more in black and white. And if you just kept Simpson a sane character who just so happens to have this different worldview, this opposing worldview of Jessica, and he has to work with this woman, you could have created some very interesting conflicts. But no, because he is Nuke, and he must become Nuke because a fucking comic book accuracy, I guess. Screw an interesting character, screw an interesting dynamic and an interesting discussion. Let's just make him a murderous, drug-fueled sociopath who's gonna do crazy shit because conflict needs to happen. And that same thing happens with the support group. You think that these guys could be cool, interesting characters who might get involved later on as well. They don't, and in the end, the only reason they exist is so that the Purple Man can use them as hostages so he can get away yet again, so we can drag this shit out even more than we already have. And that's kind of the predominant issue with the last third of the Jessica Jones show. It feels like a lot of these subplots, which felt like they could maybe serve to enforce the themes of the show or maybe act as supporting pillars for the show, just get used as stupid conveniences so that things can keep going on. I mean, for fuck's sake, after episode 10, Hogarth is fucking gone. Like, after that whole divorce storyline is resolved, Hogarth doesn't do anything except bail Jessica out in the final episode. That's her contribution. She was just there. She was just introduced into this whole thing so that she could get, tempted by the Purple Man's potential and help him escape. Same thing with Simpson. Simpson becomes a lunatic murderer at the most convenient time so that he can keep dragging the fucking Purple Man story arc more and more. And while Purple Man is an interesting and effective villain, the fact of the matter is he is not enough to support a 13-hour show like this because there is no forward momentum happening with him. We just feel like we're constantly being circle-jerked and meandering nowhere for a good few episodes even, despite some interesting things happening in those episodes. It's just blatantly obvious that this show did not need to be 13 episodes. This should have been 10 episodes at best. Or if they absolutely needed it to be 13 episodes, they should have severely cut down the running time of each episode to maybe like half an hour at best. because, as I already confirmed, a lot of these subplots that you think might matter and might enforce the themes, they just get used as stupid plot conveniences to keep dragging shit out even more, and the whole support group thing is really where I couldn't even believe it. Like, there's this moment, another moment where the show could have very easily have been over, but then a subplot that you think might serve the themes and the story just gets used as a plot convenience, and then the whole support group thing gets dropped completely. And then there's just other weird things that are problematic throughout the whole show and not just the last third of it. Like, the whole incest twins is like, what the fuck? Like, why are these people here? Why do we have incest twins in this show? Like, if I'm supposed to care about these people, why couldn't you just write them as a, halfway interesting brother, sister, family, I guess? Like, why do they need this weird thing where one of them is autistic, I guess, and then there's this whole thing where they're arguing like a married couple a lot of the time, which is where the incest subtext comes from? Like, why the fuck are these guys here? Or why are they here as you're presenting them to me? That's another thing that Daredevil did very, very well. It was able to show ordinary people deal with the consequences of being pawns in the villain's scheme, but they felt like honest-to-God people, like Miss Hernandez from Daredevil, the little Spanish-speaking old lady whose tenement building is being torn down by the Kingpin as part of his scheme to rebuild Hell's Kitchen. There's no real character like her in here who feels like an honest-to-God person who's who's just a victim of the mastermind schemes. Like, there is no real person like that. A lot of these characters who you think could end up as compelling victims or to enforce the themes and ideas of the story, they just get used as fucking plot conveniences to drag shit out even more and more. And that's kind of where Jessica Jones ends up. It has 7 or 8 consecutive episodes of excellent storytelling, very gripping storytelling that's probably going to be a little hard for a lot of people to watch, and then it just fucks around, circle jerks you for 3 consecutive episodes, and then the finale finally manages to end this whole circle jerk and end on a somewhat satisfying note. I don't know what Season 2 is going to have, but if it's really going to be about this whole nuke paramilitary drug bullshit, I don't think I'm going to be able to stomach it, because if what they do with Simmons in this season is any indication, then Season 2 is going to be fucking horrible. Like, I'm already nervous for Daredevil Season 2 because it has the Punisher, whose every conversation is going to be like every generic Batman versus Jason conversation you've ever heard, where it's going to be like, I kill people. No, you don't kill people, so you're a coward. And then there's the Hand, and I don't care about the Hand. So despite a mostly positive track record for the Netflix shows, and despite me really liking a lot of that stuff, I'm kind of nervous about their future output. Daredevil Season 2 is almost out. I've heard some good things about it. I've heard the pacing's fucking awful. I really hope that's not the case, because I don't think I could survive that after Jessica Jones again. But we'll see. Like, these guys have not royally screwed up anything yet, but if the next season of Jessica Jones is really going to be this paramilitary bullshit that's going to tie back into Nuke, and that's going to be the big crux of the whole season next time, then please fucking cancel it now and spare me and everybody else with a functioning brain the fucking misery of watching that disaster unfold on screen. Just shoot it in the head while it's in the crib and spare us all the misery, okay? Okay. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the final act of Jessica Jones. I'm probably going to get a lot of shit for this, but I'm sorry. There are just too many problems with the third act that kind of plague, that retroactively break the show if you go back and think about it or even watch it from the beginning. And I felt like a lot of those have been kind of neglected and needed to be pointed out in a fucking video already. So yeah, if you like this video, please comment, rate, and subscribe. Maybe follow me on Twitter or whatever, and I'll hopefully see you guys next time. Bye.